Hello and welcome to another episode of our Brothers Creed podcast, where we talk about motivation, experiences, and exploring what the world has to offer. We're the Thomas Brothers. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Jared.
And today we have an awesome podcast for you guys today talking about overcoming failures. So it's going to be a good one.
Let's do it.
All right.
You can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in the pocket.
We will not go quietly into the night.
They tell me you're a man with true grit.
I am the one who knocks.
Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
That's how winning is done.
Today we're talking about overcoming failure. Have you ever failed at something before?
Actually, I had a really hard time with this episode. I've never failed with anything my whole life. I've just been smooth sailing.
Oh, you
actually,
too? You too? Yeah.
Actually, I'll start off with a good quote.
Okay.
One of my favorite quotes is, and this is by an anonymous person. Actually, no, it's not. It's by Franklin D. Roosevelt. A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor.
I like that quote.
I like it because, if life was just easy and just cruised on through life and nothing ever happened, then you would never really grow and you'd never really have any experiences. And you'd never be like a seasoned sailor, kind of, so to say.
Yeah, you know how to navigate rough waters, which will come.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, this episode is kind of something that I feel like has been on the books for quite a while. I mean, since we first started, it's been one of the ones that we wanted to talk about.
I think that there's such like a weird, and then society, I feel like maybe society is coming around a little bit more now for people to try things. I feel like there's this really growing entrepreneurial culture out there where it's like, you can try something and fail. That's okay. And like, do it while you're young because you have less at risk. And like, especially with, people like Gary Vee and stuff like that, that's become much more popular. And I think it's a good thing because sometimes people can be racked by the idea that they failed in the past. And there's so much around that. And also just persevering through something to achieve what you want to achieve. So
yeah, 100%. I guess, way back whenever it was like you graduate, you might go to college, you might not, but the whole thing was to land a secure job working for Ford for the next 40 years and get your pension and maybe as secure as possible, which it's not particularly like that anymore.
You work for 39 and a half years and they'll lay you off.
Yeah, right.
I think one of my wife's uncles is in that situation. He was in that situation. He was just about to retire from from his career at like one of those car companies, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to let you go." He's like,
I got a half a year left.
Yeah.
So, it's just really interesting. And failure isn't something new to our generation, but it's something that maybe is more, is talked about. And maybe it's just because with the introduction of social media, people have more of a platform to talk about things and to share their experiences and really kind of, moving forward and helping that potentially to overcome some of those failures.
Well, I feel like that's actually only been recently.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like at the onset of social media, it was almost like you only showed the best part of your life. And it was like, and especially like with Instagram, it was like, oh, I have the perfect life. I have the perfect everything. And I think a lot of people kind of saw through that and they're like, I don't want that fakeness anymore.
But really you're like masterly in debt and you've got, your marriage is falling apart and you're all this sort of kind of stuff. But it's like you have the perfect family and perfect life and perfect house and everything on.
Yeah, my wife was just telling me the other day about these bloggers who they're like, this girl's like, oh, I had the perfect marriage and like we are so, she gives like she's a sex therapist or something like that, and she talks about how her and her husband are a perfect marriage and they're the ideal marriage, and then they just got divorced, and it's like, I don't know, I feel like there's more of a push towards authenticity than just being fake. Because everybody has struggles, and there's nothing wrong with saying like, yeah, I'm struggling in this aspect, or I've struggled here or there.
Yeah, completely.
Whereas previously it was like a thing I was seen as a weakness, whereas now I think it's seen as being honest.
Yeah, 100%. So really kind of a little bit of the path or the process of what we want to talk about through overcoming failure is kind of how it's seen. We've talked a little bit about it, but what is the purpose of failure? Does it have a purpose in our life, and what can we redirect it as? and then how can we overcome it and how can we move forward. We each kind of put together some stories, some personal stories, as well as some stories from history or from things that we've seen that have been motivating to us in overcoming some of our own personal failures. So I'll start out with this is one it's very simple, but actually I think it's kind of cool because it so WD-40, right?
Yeah.
Is a
water displacement.
Yeah,
test
water
40.
displacement. Yeah, and so basically the whole process behind that was that it took 39 reiterations of the formula to get this specific formula, this degreaser and rust protection solvent correct. They went through 39 different iterations and over years and years of trial and error and putting it on stuff and trying to figure out how it works. And then finally on their 40th try, they figured it out. And then they put it into the name. This is WD-40. It's like, this is the successful one was 40. Not that they knew that 40 was going to be the number, but hey, it worked out.
I heard some kind of, you researched this, so let me know, but I had heard that there was some type of NASA thing that they were doing that for, and that they were trying to do some type of water displacement for some kind of NASA thing, and they were like, oh, this was just test number 40, didn't do what we wanted, threw it out, but it was actually, oh, hey, this is actually pretty valuable. Is that true?
Yeah, I think I heard something. There's a lot of different stories behind it. I have heard that story before, but I'm not sure if it's actually what it was.
Either way, it's pretty cool though that it's like, hey, this is not a failure. This is, if it was just thrown out as something that didn't work exactly for the way they wanted and they still used it, that's a success. And then even if it was, they persevered through 30 tries and they're like, hey, we found what we wanted.
Yeah, and even just getting into that story, if that's actually how it happened, like you said, even if that wasn't the intended use for it and it didn't work on what they wanted, it still works on something else.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a failure. It just wasn't successful for exactly what they wanted it to be successful for.
Yeah.
Which is just a redirect. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about moving forward. But you shared a quote, and there's another quote that I liked. And it has to kind of go with one of the principles that I think go hand in hand with failure is hard work. Sometimes people work and work and work and work, and it still doesn't work out, right? They put forth the effort and they do all they can do, and you know what? It doesn't work out. But if it doesn't work out, then it's a cool opportunity to be able to kind of recollect yourself and turn and figure something else out. So the quote is, it's a Latin proverb. It says, "If the wind will not serve, take to the oars." So
yeah,
I just kind of like that. It's like, well, if everything's not honky dory and going your way, and the wind's not blowing in the perfect direction, even though you want to get to your right destination,
try something different.
Put the oars in the water and row.
Yep.
And so I just kind of thought that was cool.
Yeah. Let me share one too.
Okay.
Albert Einstein said, a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. So it's like, a failure, like what is a failure? Someone who just sits at home and does absolutely nothing and never tries anything. How does that compare against the guy who tried to go out and maybe start a business or tried a new hobby and just didn't like it, or tried something new, or tried to go dancing with his wife and was just like, hey, you know what? This is not my thing, or kept stepping on her toes, That is trying those things and being vulnerable is how you grow. And in my mind, it's not trying to do those things and not exposing yourselves to new things. That is the true failure and the true tragedy in life. I mean, obviously not exposing yourself to everything. I mean, there's plenty of bad things out there, but still.
Yeah, I agree.
Never trying, I guess, is the true failure.
Yeah. One time in a job that I had, I was talking with my manager, and we were talking about promotions and the next level and everything else. And, I was like, oh, I'm ready, I'm ready to go. I'm ready for the next one. I'm ready for the next level. But we got to talking, and he was like, well, what about this, and asking me a bunch of questions, and I didn't know the answers to all the questions. I was like, well, dang, maybe I'm not as ready as I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but it was kind of funny because then he turned around and he said, Ethan, I think you're ready too. He's like, I just wanted to ask you all those questions that he said, I don't even know the answers to most of those questions. And he was like, don't let perfection impede, or don't let perfection get in the way of progression.
Yep, exactly.
And he was like, I know you're a hard worker. I know you're going to get it done. And I know you can do it. Even if it takes time to learn or whatever else, then you can still do it. And so that was something that I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a build up to not failure in that situation, but it's these stories are kind of build up to getting to the point of, okay, well, once we get to failure, where do you go from there?
Yeah. That's I like that saying. Why don't you share some stories? So we've each kind of researched some stories that we've liked about failure, just generally in the world, and then we've also got some personal stories to share. So why don't you go ahead and share one of your stories?
So this story maybe is a bit of a stretch. It's a make-believe story, but
okay,
it really was impactful on me. And as we get further into the podcast and we share some of our personal experiences, then I think it'll be more apparent too. So, but in the last Avengers movie, so Avengers Endgame, right? Remember, so Thor, right? He, do you remember what happened? So in the Avengers,
hold on. Spoiler alert.
Okay, these movies are like 4 years old, so you should be good. So in the previous movie, in Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War, Thor had killed Thanos. Or no, he had come to, basically he was trying to stop Thanos from killing half of all life in the whole
And he
galaxy.
came in with that axe and you got right into his chest.
Came in with the axe and he threw it into his chest, and then Thanos snapped and said, or he said, you should have went for the head.
Yeah.
And then he snapped and he killed all
half of
the entire
in all the universe.
Life in all the universe.
I just watched that like 2 days ago, so
yeah,
very fresh in my mind.
And so in Thor, Thor made a mistake, right? He should have gone for the head. And I was watching this thing that said he could have gone for the head easily, but it was
talking about
it was kind of a pride thing for Thor to hit him in the chest with the axe instead of the head, and so it was kind of more of like a I control you type thing.
Yeah, and he went slowly, kind of pushing it.
Yeah, trying to push. Yeah, but this just destroyed Thor, right? And so in the next movie, the Endgame, he is just depressed like crazy. He's gained a bunch of weight, and he's just like cooped up in his house, and is like shirking all of his responsibilities as the king of Asgard. And obviously there's a lot that's happened to him. His whole planet or his whole world got destroyed, and lots of people died and everything else. But it's just this one thing that he can't get over. I should have went for the head. I should have killed him. I should have done this, and he struggled with that. So, rounding that out, that's a little preface for an Endgame when they go back in time, and his job is to go back to Asgard from years ago to get one of the Infinity Stones, and he runs into his mom.
Yeah,
and his mom is there, and she's like, you're not my Thor. Yeah. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, what are you wearing? And he's like, I always wear this. He's in like a robe and like, and he's like, yeah, I'm totally lying. I'm from the future. But she's talking to him, and he sits down with her, and he basically tells her what we just talked about, that he messed up, and that he said, I feel like an idiot with an axe. And she says to him, and I'm sharing this because I really liked this part, and it kind of motivated me, but she says to him, an idiot, no, but a failure, yes. And he goes, well, that's kind of harsh. And she goes, but you know what that makes you? Just like everyone else. And, he says, well, I'm not supposed to be like everyone else. And then she goes on to say, everyone fails at who they're supposed to be, but the measure of a person or a hero is how well they succeed at being who they are. I really like that. And I kind of compared that to, I don't know, for example, being perfect, right? We're supposed to be perfect, but we can't possibly be perfect in every way because we are imperfect beings. But that is the end goal. So we can't be exactly what we're supposed to be, but we need to succeed at being the best person we are and who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of goes back to our creed, right? We need to succeed at being who we are.
Yeah.
And who are we? Well, we are defined by our creed and our actions.
Yeah.
And that to me was it kind of, he got a little emotional, and then it was kind of motivation to him that his mom was telling him this and saying, kind of, it happens to everyone. Get over it. Regain your composure. She told him, eat a salad, and and be who you know you can be, and act like the person you know you are. So that was a cool one on kind of a weird story on failure that and then he goes back and he's still kind of trying to figure himself out throughout the whole movie, but I'm excited to see kind of what they do with his character in the future.
Yeah, I was just watching it the other day, and I thought that was pretty impactful as well. She's just like, you just have to, you can't be perfect in all situations. Just be yourself. And I think that when you think about like this life and how we're imperfect human beings trying to be better men, trying to be better women, just people in general, and it's kind of like a stone in a river, where the stone gets in the river and the river just chips out off all the hard edges and it smooths out that rock. And that's really what this life is for, is that chip out all the edges.
Yeah. Tossed and turned until the edges are smooth.
That's right. So, let me share one of my stories. Well, I have a couple of stories. So these are just kind of like little stories, but I think that they're really, really cool. It's just about these different entrepreneurs. And for me, I've always kind of admired some of these entrepreneurs. And this is not the only way to fail. And I don't want to make it seem like, if you don't make money, then you're a failure. You can succeed or fail in many different things. Just like even little things like being a father, being kind, being anything. So James Dyson, the British inventor who designed Dyson vacuum cleaners, the company. So he invented the dual cyclone bagless vacuum cleaner. And what people don't know about it is, while developing the vacuum, he went through 5,126 failed prototypes before getting it right.
That's more than 40.
Yeah, exactly. Vacuum, so VC 5126 vacuum cleaner. He also exhausted his savings in the process. He's now worth over $4.5 billion. So, in that one, I just really learned persistence is that lesson. And like and everybody knows the one about Thomas Edison, and like he didn't fail all those times. He just found all those, like, was it 10,000 ways didn't work or something like that? And so there was another one that Dr. Seuss. I think everybody knows Dr. Seuss and the books, and they're just so unique. I don't think anything out there is quite like Dr. Seuss. It's very unique. And it says that he submitted his first book to 27 different publishers, and all of them rejected it. So he was walking home, and he was about to burn the manuscript because he's like, this is garbage, I'm going to throw this away. He ran into one of his buddies from Dartmouth, and he was like, well, let me help you find a publisher for this book. And he did, and he went to, this other publisher picked him up, and he went on to sell over 600 million copies of his books. And so the lesson there, I think, is that sometimes if the wind isn't blowing, take your oars out. Sometimes you got to pivot a little bit, and then that's when you're going to get success. In this case, you can't do it alone. Sometimes one man is not an island, and so he's running into that friend. Maybe that was a blessing for him. Is it?
Yeah, for sure.
God said, you put all your effort into it and have faith that it'll work, and I'll put someone in your way that'll help it bring it to the finish line. And so that one's pretty cool.
I like the quote of like, what is luck? And they say the luck is the intersection between
preparation,
opportunity, and preparation.
Yeah, totally. Also, similar to that, Walt Disney, he was fired from his job because he didn't have any creativity. They're like, you don't have any creativity, get out of here. And then he started his own company, and obviously we know how that ended up. He's in
cryostasis.
I was gonna say he's in cryostasis now. Yeah, he had some kind of cancer, right? And then
I'm not sure.
The legend is he's in cryostasis beneath the castle in Disney World, and that one day when they solve pancreatic cancer or whatever, they'll unfreeze him and he'll come back to life.
Demolition Man.
You know, he bought that.
I remember that movie.
Yeah, that was a good movie. They bought that land from the CIA. You know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that whole Disney World used to be a swamp, and they bought it from the CIA.
Probably for next to nothing.
Yeah, it was a swamp, and then they turned it into this amazing. Think about how much business goes through Orlando. Anyway, my last one here is J.K. Rowling. So she wrote the Harry Potter books, and she was, was an author during. Let's see. It says Rowling nurtured her vision to become an author during a 7-year period that included the death of her mother, divorce from her first husband, and raising her children in near poverty. So pretty stark conditions there. After her manuscript was repeatedly rejected by major publishers, 12 times in fact, a small London publisher chose to publish it only after the CEO's 8-year-old daughter begged her father to print the book. Rowling's Harry Potter books have sold over 400 million copies. Obviously, best-selling book, huge franchise. It reminds me of, you ever seen that movie, Little Women?
No.
Have
you seen that movie?
My beautiful, amazing wife asked me to watch that movie with her, and I did. And the whole, I think it's off of a book. And the whole thing was that this girl wrote this book of Little Women, and then she took it to a publisher. The publisher was like, "This is garbage." And she gave it the first chapter, and then he's like, "This is garbage. No one wants to read this. There's no love story. There's no all this stuff." And then the guy's daughter's like, "This book is amazing. You have to buy this." So it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that happened in real life. I don't know.
Interesting.
It was a chick flick that I watched with my wife. So
cool. I think those are all awesome stories. I think kind of the underlying characteristic in a lot of people that overcome failure is perseverance, and just in a can-do attitude. One of the things that I wrote down is optimism is a characteristic of someone who bounces back quickly from failure.
And the faster you bounce back, the better. That's why they say fail fast and fail forward. Just keep going. Just the faster you fail, the quicker you'll get to the end state where you're finding that success.
Yeah. Sometimes that's easier said than done.
Yes.
So kind of, I guess a personal story for me, and I kind of really tossed around how in depth I wanted to go with kind of my personal story of failure, but mine is so I graduated college with a business degree in 2015, and went to work in California and was enjoying what I was doing, and everything was going well, but I really kind of hit a roadblock where I needed to pivot to something different, and I was really racking my brain of, is this what I want to do? I looked at my manager and said, is this where I want to be in 10 years? Do I want to have his job in 10 years?
Yeah.
And it was really, the answer was no.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well, it was searching through, well, what career opportunities do I have? I was so early in my career and everything else. And I said, well, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to continue down this particular road and path? And after just tons of research and going back to kind of going back to the beginning, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to go to dental school. And with that, obviously there came lots of changes. And one of those things was I had to go back to school. I didn't have all of the prerequisites to be able to qualify for dental school. And so I took a career move, and the end goal for me was to hopefully create something by using my business degree in combination with dentistry and building something out of that. So I transitioned and moved back to North Carolina from California, and went back to school, taking chemistry classes and biology classes and all the prerequisite classes. So 2 years of almost 2 years of taking all these courses and semester after semester, I was at the point where I was about to complete all of those classes. And basically, dental school applications come once a year, around the beginning of summertime, June, July. And I was ready to apply. And so I went through, I had taken the dental admissions test, or the DAT. It's kind of like the equivalent to the MCAT for medical school. And I had taken it and done okay. But I was at the point of application. So I filled out the whole application. I wrote all the essays and everything else to the schools that I, thought I could get into, number one, and that I was interested in going to. Sent in my application and hoped for the best. So I actually received an interview callback for one of the schools that I really wanted to go to. So I went to the interview and thought that it went really well, and I really enjoyed it. I thought that they really liked me. But then I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I finally got a letter of non-acceptance, basically, that I didn't get in. I had read and everything that it was common not to get in your first round and everything else, and so I was pretty upset. I was like, man, I've been working so hard. I felt that this was right. I felt that I should be doing this. I put all this effort into it, and I said, well, I'm going to give it another round. So basically, at this point, I had finished all of my schooling, and I had gotten a full-time job using my business degree to help support my family through, life, obviously. But in my off time, and after work, I was taking additional courses. I was studying to retake the entrance exam and everything else. And basically throughout that whole next year, working to apply again. And so I put forth effort again until that next year and applied again. And I didn't get in again, that second round. And it was extremely devastating. And I'm probably talking about it more lightly than my wife would talk about it. But it was hard to really see that as, I saw that as a huge failure in my life. And so, how did, at that point, after years of trying to, I felt like I was in, I had two sinking ships that had holes in them, and I was trying to bail water out of both of them, and I couldn't focus on one, because if I focused on one, then the other one would sink.
What was it? Was it your career working,
yeah,
and then your other one was the dental career?
Yeah, and probably that might have been my problem too, is I didn't have, all of my eggs in one basket. But when you have, family and two kids to feed and everything else, I just, it was a struggle, definitely. But how did it make me feel? I was sad. I was angry. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed from people, for people who had supported me, friends and family who knew that I was going through that and everything else. I was a little bit ashamed and felt that, man, if I only would have studied harder, if I would have done better, maybe if I would have done better on that one test or whatever else, maybe it would have been different. Or maybe if I wouldn't have said this in the interview and said this, then it would be different. And kind of getting
a lot like Thor.
Yes.
Right? Just like mulling over, like, oh, man.
If I would have done this, I would have done that, then I wouldn't be in the position I'm in. Was it a waste of time? I really struggled. And actually, putting together my thoughts on this episode, I was just like, man, am I ready for this episode? I was like, I don't know. I could talk about all this stuff and talk a big game and say, oh, well, it's fine. But that's why I said the failing quick and failing forward is kind of hard sometimes. I would say that I am still not completely over that quote unquote failure, but I'm really starting to see maybe some of the benefits of it, right? Was that step that I took in my life. Maybe the end goal wasn't to be a dentist. Maybe it was to get me out of the career that I was in and put me into this new area, provide new opportunity. Maybe it was to get me closer to, our family on this, on this side of the country
so we could create a Brothers Creed podcast.
Exactly. So, the more time passes by, the more I see and kind of those scars fade. The more I see that, hey, like this is kind of a direct result of potentially this going, the dental school thing not working out. And I mean, I would consider myself a grinder in whatever I do. Like, whatever I try to do, I try to put forth the best effort that I can and move forward. Sometimes you get bogged down, but, where am I now? I still don't completely understand all of the aspects of why it didn't work out, but I don't think I need to. And it would be hard to see that all within a couple years, maybe 50 years down the road, or maybe in the afterlife, I'll be like, dang, I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah.
But the cool,
sometimes
I was gonna say the cool thing is that I wasn't sure, at that time what that whole period, what effect that was going to have on my the grander aspect of my career in general. But basically, what I did is I continued along my business path and what I had built into that career path, and through several different large blessings and opportunities, I was able to kind of direct my way and get my way into areas that have been amazing opportunities for me personally and for my family, and obviously will continue as far as further growth moving forward within a career. So
one thing I like that I've heard kind of similar to what you're saying is that I think Gary Vee said this. He said, he had a chance to get in on like Instagram or maybe it was Uber, like back in the day. And he's like, if I had paid $20,000, which was my standard like buy into a company, I would be a multi-billionaire today. And he's like, but I don't think about that as a failure or as like an issue. He's like, I think about that as like, well, maybe if I had done that, I would be, instead of being where I'm at right now, I would be, 5 years ago. What if I was, on a bus or in a car in China and someone wrecked into my car and I died? That took you on a whole different path. And what if that path was a bad path? What if you became a dentist and then something happened to where you guys were going, your trajectory in life changed, and then something bad happened to your kids or your family because you were on that trajectory?
Or Dr. Strange, where he got in a car accident and his hands went into the dashboard and he couldn't operate anymore. He's just
yeah. I mean, that's a fictional along the Marvel characters, but yeah, really, he's like but then he found a new calling, and I think that's just kind of how I think about when I think of things, and now obviously I haven't gone through what you've gone through, and that's that's understandable, and thinking back and like, oh man, that was such a hard time, but we don't know. Sometimes
I think everybody's,
the Lord's ways are not our own ways.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's hard to compare one person's struggles to another, right? Because everybody is at a different mental state. Everybody is at different stages in their lives, and what one person might have financial struggles, and another person has marital struggles, or another person has health struggles, and it is so hard to compare struggles or failures or whatever it may be. But it's one of the purposes of this podcast is to be kind of a support chain and support net for each other. And and talking motivation and really kind of overcoming and developing, overcoming hardship and developing who we are, continuing to become better in everything that we do.
I hope you know that I never saw you as a failure. I saw you as a success in that you were willing to try something that was really hard that you didn't know you could do, and you tried it and you gave it a really good shot, and you're just like, hey, it didn't work out, let's pivot to the next thing. And that's success. Being able to try something, give it your best, and then if it doesn't work out, then just pivot to something else,
Yeah, definitely.
I have kind of a story that's not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar in a way that just kind of how I reacted to it, and maybe the wins and the oars kind of a thing. So growing up, I never was really good at standardized tests like the ACT, SAT. I did bad on them in high school. And, these are college aptitude tests. And I didn't do very good on it. And I always was very turned off or put off, I guess you could say, that they said, oh, well, your aptitude for college is not very good. You didn't do very good on this. I was like, how are you going to tell me how good I am going to be in college based off of a test I have to take in 2 hours on a Saturday?
Before a lacrosse game.
Yeah. That is just so ridiculous to me. And so I, with that, I wanted to go to Brigham Young University in Provo just because that's where my parents went. That's where my older sister had gone. And there's three, for those of you who don't know, there's 3 Brigham Young University campuses, just one in Provo. And then there's 2 sister colleges, one in Hawaii and also one in Idaho. And the one in Idaho is meaningfully easier to get into, but still an excellent school. And so I got into BYU Idaho, and I was like, well, I guess I'll just go there, and then maybe I'll go to a semester or 2, and then I'll reapply to BYU, see if I can go there. I felt like it was kind of like that was my parents' alma mater. I felt like I should go there, and so I went to school, and I actually had a quarter scholarship, and I was kind of had this chip on my shoulder in that I was going to prove to myself and also prove to the school that I deserved and I was college material, and that college aptitude test was totally BS. And so I went to school and I did really, really well. I got nearly all A's. In fact, I got after my first semester, I had a quarter scholarship based off of my grades in high school, and then after that, I had a full ride the entire rest of the 4 years that I was there.
Based on academics.
Alone, my GPA. And so I had above like a 3.85 was you had to have above that. And so I did really well, and I actually reapplied to BYU with those really good grades, and they denied me. And I was like, man, like what do I have to do? And I just realized it's like maybe this is just the path I need to be on. And it was actually that semester that I met my wife. And so, and I have 4 beautiful kids, boys, crazy boys. But it's just crazy how things work out. And then that continues because I was actually I was going to do my master's. I wanted to do my master's degree, and to do that, you have to take GMAT. And I'm like, man, this GMAT, I'm not good at these tests. And like maybe I was just telling myself that, and I was like, no, I can be good at this. And so I really studied hard, and I took the test, and I just did okay. But I didn't. In my mind, it's like in the research that I had done, if you don't get your master's from a top tier school, then it really doesn't do you a whole lot of good to get it, especially if you're going to move across the country. So at the time I was living in Utah, and I was like, well, I could just get into a local school here, but no one's going to recognize that school out in the East Coast. I've ever moved to the East Coast because I wanted to move back to Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I was like, just looking for other options. I didn't do as well as I'd hoped. And I was looking, and it kind of allowed me to look for other options to where I didn't have to go to an in-person, there's an in-person school. I didn't have to take a break from work. I was able to continue working, and I was able to do it all virtually, which at the, now it seems like every college is virtual. But so I got accepted to Northwestern University for their master's in data science, and it was a great program. And that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, is that master's degree. And it was well outside my comfort zone. Lots of programming, lots of writing Python, writing code, writing R. And in one semester, I was working full-time at Goldman Sachs. And in the end, I was working 50 hours a week. So at Goldman, you're working 60 hours a week, period. And I was probably working an additional 50 hours a week on schoolwork. It was full bore. It was crazy. And that was the hardest semester. Other semesters weren't like that, but and then I ended up, I got 1 A- of all my classes, 1 A-. And that was because of the semester that we moved here. We were living with my parents in the basement. I had just gotten a new job, and it was just like, and so many things were changing, and I got an A-. So but other than that, I got all A's. So I feel like I proved to myself that those tests didn't matter. And like,
even though you felt like a failure at one point in time,
multiple points in time, I felt like a failure because I didn't do good on the SAT or the ACT, and then again because I didn't do as good as I hoped on the GMAT.
Yeah, that's true.
But I was like, you know what? This doesn't matter in the real world. Like, the GMAT doesn't matter. I did this really tough, really hard, excellent, from an excellent university, and I did great at this master's, and so I was very proud of that. And I feel like that's one of those things where if the wind's not blowing, just get your oars. Find a way around it, and you can still be successful. And I probably wouldn't have gotten a full ride for college at BYU based off my academics, but it had worked out great when I was at BYU. And BYU is an excellent school, and I would recommend anybody to go there. And I think it just kind of changed my mind. I just had that when I was a little kid. I had it set in my mind to go to BYU, and then I changed my mind. I guess I had it forced on me, but it was kind of like, yo, you need to stay here. I just felt that, and I was like, okay.
And then you met your wife.
And my wife, and then
yeah.
So that was kind of my personal story of, I feel like, overcoming some failures.
Yeah, that's great. I transitioning into learning from those failures. We shared some stories, but I just wanted to kind of touch base on some kind of one-liners of moving forward, right? And don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of learning a hard lesson. Don't fear failure. Don't let it become paralyzing in your decision-making process. Don't be, well, what if it doesn't work out? Then I'm just not going to do it because if there's an option of it not working out, don't do that. Spend time studying our own failures that we feel like we've had, or setbacks, let's say. Study those. Study what we learn from them. Study talk with other people. Talk about their opportunities of learning that they have had, and kind of grow together. I like this one. Have a plan to fix it and prevent it from happening again. There's a quick story. In 1519, Captain Hernan Cortez landed in Veracruz to begin his great conquest. Upon arriving, he reportedly gave the order to all of his men to burn the ships that they arrived in.
No going back.
Yeah. And basically, there's a whole big thing about burn the ships.
Yep.
Right? Basically, he, in essence, gave them no other option but to succeed of their goal of conquest.
Yeah. You hear that a lot in like the entrepreneurial community. They would say, you got to burn your ships.
Yeah.
Take away that,
for sure.
that fallback, and this is the only option.
I like that. I like that little.
I do.
Don't be, when you fall, get back on the horse. Don't just sit there and, whenever we were playing lacrosse, there was this one goalie that we had on one of the teams that I played, and whenever he would get scored on, he would like throw a fit and lay on the ground and be like, oh, and just lay there. And that always made the coach so mad because it was like, so what? They scored on you. Don't lay there and pout and throw a tantrum. Get up.
Well, it's because he felt embarrassed.
Yeah. Get up.
He felt like a failure because he let the team down.
Yeah.
But people don't see it like that. It's just that sometimes people get in their own heads of what they think other people perceive you as. And it's like, that sometimes we're in our own heads, and that makes it even worse.
Yeah, for sure. And as his teammates, I mean, yeah, obviously if he was like doing really bad, we're like, dude, what the heck? But he was a good goalie. And so from our aspect, we're like, just get up and get back on the horse and do your best again.
Yeah.
And then, being optimistic, we talked about that, and then being persistent and not giving up. If it doesn't work out, fail fast and fail forward. There's something else out there. So
let's. One thing we did previously with fatherhood that we like to do again is we each wrote a quote. Hopefully these quotes will catch on and like they'll start quoting us. People will start quoting us.
Yeah, like maybe Joe Rogan will be like, "Oh yeah, the great Jared Thomas once said."
Yeah, exactly. So as if we just have to flood social media with all these quotes, and then they'll be like, someone will pick them up, and then Google will start having like an archive for us.
Yeah,
that's how we know. That's how we know we made it, right?
Yeah,
we have archive of our quotes.
Yeah, you know what happens when you Google Ethan Thomas?
What?
There's a video game character named Ethan Thomas, and it's like just pages and pages and pages of Ethan Thomas, a video game character, and I'm like, I'll never get to the top of that list.
Yeah, you will. If you Google my name, it's basically there's so many people named Jared Thomas. You would never find me. 1 in a million. So that's what I'm like. I guess that's a little cybersecurity right there.
Yeah, or maybe I don't want to get found. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you your quote?
I'll do it. So I said, if you are afraid to fail, you will be afraid to try new things. If you don't try new things, you will never grow to meet your full potential. Falling short of your potential is the true failure. Jared Thomas.
I like it.
Yeah, I kind of said that same thing earlier, but. If you know me, that's kind of a very logical step through. I'm a very logical and pragmatic, so
let's analyze that.
Stepping through that, it's like, well, if you don't do this, then you're not going to do this, and then this happens, and then that's the true failure.
Yeah, for sure. So mine said, sometimes the pain of failure leaves scars that can hurt for a long time, but what separates true failure from success is how we respond to it. Not learning from things that don't go how we planned is the true definition of failure.
I like that.
Yeah, Ethan Thomas. Quote, unquote.
Very good. Well, this has been awesome. I think that there's so much here. There's so much we could have talked. There's so much more to this, but I think we've shared some great stuff, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, you too.
Sometimes it can be difficult to be vulnerable, but I think that is the way that you grow. So.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, everybody listening to this on podcast, you can find us on Instagram at a.brothers.creed. Also, you can find us on our YouTube channel if you want to see our pretty little faces. Go over and
my growing beard.
Yeah, check it out. Give us a subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the podcast.
Also, if you can, give us a review. Or if you can, give us 5-star review, maybe a couple comment on how good it is. Maybe say, hey, these guys are great.
It's
whatever.
Free.
I think that helps with our rankings and maybe might help other people discover us. So if you could do that, that'd be appreciated.
Awesome. Well, let's continue to build that creed together.
Let's do it.